Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 47. I stayed barely awake because it was fucking horrible. I mean, the Moto3 race was awesome, but since Moto2 started and the UFC was done, I basically, uh, I basically just fought to stay awake because it was tough. And yeah, Keelan, hello. And did you enjoy those races or did you find them equally as boring?
Hello, Leo, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 47 of the BadMotoGP podcast. Great to be back once again. And yes, I got to admit, this weekend was one of the less eventful weekends of the year. We always get them at some point, and we've been really spoiled for choice lately. But I think based on the excitement we've had recently, this weekend was definitely a more low par weekend. Plus, we had UFC 295, which was absolutely incredible. We'll get onto that in a bit. But yeah, as far as the MotoGP and as far as the wider racing goes, we had a king crowned. We had some crashes, but still a slightly quieter weekend, but a very important one coming back to Europe and the Middle East, of course.
Quick question before we head into MotoGP. Did you think it was an early stoppage between Pereira and Yiri?
I thought it was a good stoppage, and I've seen a lot of discourse online about this, and I completely understand why people think it was an early stoppage, because Yuri reacted very quickly and very well to Mark Goddard jumping in and stopping the fight. But if you look at the two shots that Yuri Prohazka took, the right hook followed by the left uppercut, he was on his way down. The elbows didn't help, and I think if Mark Goddard had let that fight go on 3 or 4 more seconds, Pereira would have landed some vicious shots on the ground anyway. So I see the argument for an early stoppage. I do get that. Just in my opinion, I think the result was inevitable. So I think it was a good stoppage.
I mean, it's always very difficult for me to respect the opinions of people who never have been punched in the face. And for me, the deciding factor was when Yuri basically clinched and Alex Pereira was landing those elbows, that he fell backwards. That was like, okay, that's not necessarily natural, because usually when you're in a position like this and you want to go for a takedown, you usually go forward and not fall backwards
Yeah.
into basically into mount, which
Mm.
is not necessarily a good position. So I completely understand Mark Goddard's stoppage there.
Hmm.
As Colby would say, Mark not so Goddard. But I mean, Yuri was quite honorable about it. He could have
Yeah.
complained, he could have made excuses there, like Colby did back then when he lost against Kamaru Usman. And I really respect that. But to have people like calling for an early stoppage when even Yuri said no, I was out, that's a little bit crazy. I mean, if MMA fighters pointed out, okay, that's one thing I can respect, but just normal internet trolls, and I completely understand Mark Goddard's reaction, especially when you want to save him from maybe a left or a right hand from Alex Pereira coming straight down into your face, which could be very dangerous long term. So I guess we have to remind ourselves that those are humans and those
Mm.
have a life after their careers. So it's a good stoppage, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, now let's come to the boring part of the sports night we had. So Enea Bastianini, he had a good start. And like apart from the overtake that Jorge Martin and Pecco had between each other, nothing happened in the top four. I
Hmm.
mean, he Jorge Martin went wide a little bit into the first corner,
Hmm.
and Pecco as well, and Enea slipped through. But then he was in front, and Alex Marquez was second, and Pecco and Jorge, they overtook each other like 2 or 3 times. But apart from that, nothing happened, and it was a tough one. And with that being said, even though it wasn't a very entertaining race, I thought it was awesome to see that Enea Bastianini finally is back, that he finally figured out the problem, and we will get into detail a little bit later. But
Hmm.
just to see him back where he belongs, because he was put into the factory seat to compete for a championship. After last year, I mean, you predicted him as a world champion. So after last year, this was the expectation. And he couldn't live up to it for various reasons. I mean, he was taken out by Luca Marini in the first sprint. And then he caused a collision in Catalonia in the first corner, and he
That's
was
right.
very, very unlucky with injuries, and
Mhm.
therefore it's nice to see him back on top and finally uh, proving everybody wrong who was calling for his seat and to swap places with Jorge Martin. And also, apparently, his crew chief figured something out, and he said that they worked a lot with the rear brake. They moved it from the foot to the thumb, and it's quite, everybody who has ridden a motorcycle will notice when you get to a certain point in lean angle, it's difficult to get to the rear brake. Especially, I don't have a lot of foot mobility. Quite frankly, I don't have a lot of mobility at all, but it's quite difficult to get a feeling for it, at least for me. And obviously, I'm not as good as a rider as Enea Bastianini is, but when you move it to the thumb, you have a lot more freedom, especially when you see people dangling their leg, like in the right hand corner. Obviously, you can't brake when the right leg is off the foot pegs. So, and with the rear brake and with the engine settings, they found something apparently. And it really helped Enea to close the gap to Pecco and Jorge. And it's very, very nice to see him back on top, because that's where he belongs. And that's what we wanted to see for the whole season. That was like the exciting part of the off season, to speculate who was better, Pecco or Enea. And there was not really a talk about Jorge Martin. But now we have those three giants, I would say. And maybe Marco Bezzecchi next year can go back into the championship hunt on a GP23. It's exciting to see Enea Bastianini being back in form. So, what did you make out of his performance?
Yeah, I thought Enea Bastianini was absolutely excellent. I thought he had a great weekend. He looked really, really good. He looked like last year's Enea Bastianini, which is not only great for Ducati and not only great for Enea Bastianini, but it's great for the championship as well. You know, like you said, this is the Enea Bastianini that we wanted to see, and it's the Enea Bastianini that I predicted would be a champion. So, for Enea's fans and for Enea Bastianini's side of the garage, there's probably a lot of vindication from this weekend because, like you said, and I couldn't agree more with you, a lot of people online have been calling for Enea's seat. They've been calling for Jorge Martin to just move into Enea's side in the factory garage without really remembering how good how good Enea Bastianini actually is. And this weekend, a lot of people got a very real reminder that Enea Bastianini is a goddamn good rider. You know, he's in the factory Ducati for a reason. He's a Moto2 world champion. The guy is as good as it gets. And yes, this season has been ravaged by injury, very, very unfortunately. Like you said, first sprint race of the season, he got taken out. Catalonia, that was his fault. Yes, that is true. But he's been ravaged by injuries this season, and he's been really frustrated and not being able to show how good he actually is. So for this weekend, to see how good Enea Bastianini actually is, and to see him kind of dominate a MotoGP race from beginning to end, ladies and gentlemen, to quote Israel China boy Adesanya, you all must have forgot.
From me, it was more or less a done deal after he was first, after the first two corners. I
Yeah.
thought, okay, Enea Bastianini is so good when it comes to race pace. There's no way, even if Alex Marquez overtakes him, there's no way he can keep this up for a whole race distance. And Enea Bastianini just did everything right. It was quite nice to see, even though the action was missing there. And it's interesting when you think about Qatar is next, where he obviously won last year. It seems to be so far away, but it was actually the beginning of last season where we saw Enea Bastianini winning for the first time. And it's exciting to have this factor in the world championship battle again, because last few races it was just him and not him, I'm sorry, just Pecco and Jorge.
Hmm.
And now we have this Enea Bastianini factor, and he is in a weird position because, like in the sprint, he didn't overtake Pecco, and he openly admitted it, that he had some problems with the front tire and wasn't too sure. And since he's not battling for the championship, he didn't want to take any risks. And this was the bell again. So we ordered some food, I believe. So let's see if the food really came or if it's somebody random. Yeah, my girlfriend will get it now. She was laying in bed, so it's now a big hurry. Peanut is also up. Yeah. Okay. Where was I?
um,
That
Recently, it's just been Jorge and Paco
Yeah,
X
yeah,
Factor.
yeah. And Enea is in a difficult situation because he has to kind of, in his own interest. Wait a second. I'll be back in a second.
No problem.
Okay, I'm more or less back. I hope so, because yeah, since we're new in this apartment, it's a little bit new how this whole thing works, because it's quite a big apartment complex and you have to communicate quite well so the delivery man finds the flat.
It's
Yeah.
a process.
So basically where I was going is Enea Bastianini has a big interest in Pecco winning the championship,
Mm-hmm.
because it's tough for Ducati to argue that Jorge Martin won the championship and is not in the factory team.
Mm-hmm.
So Ducati has a say about who goes into which team when it comes to Pramac and to the factory team. So it's easy for Ducati to just swap those two. And therefore, I think Enea Bastianini has an interest in Pecco winning the championship, A. But B, he also has an interest in showing everybody he is the top man. And let's say there's a scenario where he wins in Qatar and wins in Valencia, but Jorge Martin wins the championship. It's still tough to argue for Ducati to swap Jorge Martin for Enea Bastianini, because Enea Bastianini had all those injuries and he's been on form, and it's a very, very tough situation. Maybe they will demote Pecco, so they will have less of a crash bill at the end of the season. So it's difficult, and I'm very excited to see how he approaches it. If he just thinks about himself and says "fuck the championship," or if he maybe helps Pecco a little bit more, which I don't hope. Like, I want to have a championship battle between Jorge Martin and Pecco without any influences from the outside. And if Enea Bastianini has the pace to win out, he should win out. I mean, Qatar is a very good track for him, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. If he's really back, if he figured it out with the rear brake and the engine brake, and if he closed the gap to the other Ducati riders, then I'm very excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, same. And I think you make another very good point. Enea Bastianini has the potential to be a real influence in this battle towards the end of the season. And I've actually been thinking about this a lot myself. It's funny that you bring it up. If I'm Enea Bastianini, the best move I can make is look out for number one and make sure that I'm winning the races, and to let Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia fight it out. I've seen a lot of people say that it's in Enea's best interest to let Peanut. Ladies and gentlemen, Peanut is back once again on the Bad MotoGP podcast, the official mascot of the show. Great to see him again.
Wait a second, I need the microphone back. Do you want to say something? Yeah, I mean, she
Hello,
was a little
Peanut.
bit confused in what's going on with the door, and so I decided to pick her up. It's quite a small girl, so yeah, hello. Hello. I didn't want to interrupt you, Keelan. I'm sorry.
No,
But
don't worry.
I guess
Peanut's always worth interrupting the show for.
you are always number one. Right? If Peanut has to take a shit, I will move everything in my power to do so. I mean, tonight at 4 a.m. I woke up to watch the UFC.
Uh
I
huh.
thought, I mean, if I have to wake up at 5 to watch Moto3, I might as well watch the UFC.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I went down, like, we live in the fifth floor, so
Mm-hmm.
I have to go down to the courtyard so she could take a pee, and we did that. And then afterwards, hey, hey, yeah, there's a stranger in the flat, which is quite scary for a watchdog. I mean, officially you're a watchdog, even though you're a small one.
I love Peanut, man.
Yeah, so and then my girlfriend took her like between Moto2 and MotoGP back down so she could take a shit, and it apparently was an enormous shit. So I don't know what she was feeding her.
Good girl, Peanut.
Yeah. I mean, it was as big as the whole dog, apparently.
Oh boy.
Maybe we can discuss later on who took a bigger shit, Jose Antonio Rueda or Peanut. But I guess she will go now. Okay, goodbye. Did everything work out? Perfect. Yeah, we have some food now. Okay,
Excellent.
so let's get back to business. And
Mhm.
I completely forgot where I was, but I think we kind of talked about the whole Enea Bastianini thing, or is there anything left to discuss?
Yeah, so essentially what I was saying briefly was Enea Bastianini has the real power to influence this title charge towards the end of the season. If I'm Enea Bastianini, basically what I'm doing is I'm looking out for number one and I'm winning as many races as I can and I'm letting Jorge Martin and Pecco fight it out. I think that's the best thing Enea can do for himself. Take the pressure off yourself by winning these races, remind people who's number one, and let those two fight it out for the championship and go into 2024 fresh and ready. So, Enea Bastianini, you're in a very good position here. Take full advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it will play out if there's a situation, for example, where Pecco is in first place and Jorge Martin is in third place in Valencia, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and Enea is in second. And if
Whoa.
Enea overtakes Pecco, Martin will win. But if Enea doesn't overtake Pecco, Pecco will win. If this
Oh.
situation plays out at the end of the season, it's gonna be wild. And like, imagine he takes him out while overtaking, or like, imagine he's so slow that Jorge Martin comes from behind and closes the gap on him. So it's gonna be a wild, wild end of the season, I believe. Especially because I think now we can talk a little bit about Pecco and Martin. Those two are so similar in pace at the moment. It's
Oh,
crazy. I mean, Jorge Martin apparently had some problems with the front today and couldn't keep up. But like, on a different note, like, everybody had problems with the front tire.
yeah.
There were quite a lot of warnings. I believe. I mean, Enea got one, Pecco got one, Marini got one, Lecuona got one, and
Mhm.
I don't know if Bautista got one as well. Who cares? I mean, yeah, I mean, who cares? If I was Bautista and I was there for one race, I would ride below pressure all day because who cares? I mean, same with Danny Pedrosa. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
And yeah, so this was apparently the reason why he fell back. But I think he showed at the beginning that he has the pace. And I thought it was brilliant by Pecco that he defended so aggressively, because
Mm.
you really had to be in front. It was so incredibly hot. I mean, it was like 30 degrees ambient temperature and apparently like 50 degrees track, I would presume.
Yeah, something
But
like that.
very, very difficult to follow. Everybody was exhausted. And it's also a very difficult situation to be in if you're a team, because like, Enea certainly didn't like pace, but he was running below pressure. And I don't know if it was like a strategy thing where they thought, okay, we have a chance to win if we run below pressure and we can afford one violation of this rule, or
Mhm.
if it was just a situation, okay, if we are in front, we might as well run below pressure, but if we are behind somebody, we are running into troubles with the front tire pressure. So it's a very, very difficult thing to get right, I believe. And since Pecco and Jorge Martin are both in a situation now where they have one warning, the next one is a 3-second penalty, and it could very, very well define the world championship, or decide the world championship. I think that Qatar won't be a big problem because it's at night,
Mhm.
and Valencia, from my experience, isn't hot as well. So I think they should be more or less out of the woods. But still, a very interesting point to mention. And therefore, I think Pecco was very, very aggressive, rightfully so, because it was so important to be in front just because of tire pressure. You couldn't follow, and I believe this is also the reason why there was little to no action today.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we get this a lot when we go to the overseas rounds, especially the Asian stages of the World Championship in Malaysia and so on and so forth. And Thailand, we get it as well. It's so important to be in front because that tire pressure is a bigger factor there than nearly anywhere else. So, pretty much agree with everything that you've said. As far as Qatar goes, I mean, I love Qatar anyway because it's a night race and it just looks so damn cool under the lights. But being at night in the desert, tire pressure shouldn't be an issue. Valencia in November really shouldn't be a problem either. But it speaks to how tight this championship is that these are factors that we have to consider. That potential tire pressure violations could decide a championship one way or the other. It's absolutely insane. And quite frankly, if Netflix had been making a documentary this year in the title, we'd have millions more MotoGP fans. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, that brings us back to a discussion I had with Maddie a
That's
couple of
right.
months ago. Like, the
Hmm.
unlimited thing just improved the things that went wrong last season, or like the season before, it was 21 where they recorded it, and go on from that. But yeah, who knows what they're doing? They probably don't know what they're doing themselves.
The
But I
Amazon one
agree.
fucking sucked, quite frankly. It was such a letdown.
Yeah, I mean, especially the way last season and this season plays out, it's so much drama in the World Championship, and it's crazy. And yeah, different topic. I think they should have continued and learned from the mistakes. But to come back to the tire pressure thing, I wonder how much strategy is involved there. If, like, for example, Pecco said to his, or Pecco and his team decided, hey, let's run below pressure and get the maximum performance out of it, because we assume Qatar and Valencia won't be much of a problem. And
Mm.
we can afford one warning. Like, or with Bastianini, the same. If you get the feeling, hey, I could win today, let's have a little bit less chattering in the front, let's have a little bit less locking on the front, because that's all caused by tire pressure, um, at least part of it. And to extract more performance out of it, I think it's like behind closed doors, nobody will admit it, that it's part of a strategy to at least do it once per season. If you get a feeling like, okay, it's important now to win, like for Enea Bastianini, for example, or for Pecco when it comes down to the World Championship, because you know, okay, you can afford one warning.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And listen, Ducati especially are masters of the game. You know, they know the rules, they know when to bend them very slightly to suit their riders. So if that was the case, it really wouldn't surprise me at all because, look, it's such a rare issue that we have to even discuss tire pressure violations and stuff. And for it to be once or twice a season, they know when to use it and when not to. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty fair game, especially when you've got nearly 50, 60 degrees track temperature. It makes sense more than any other time to do it.
Yeah. And you touched on something very interesting. Ducatis are masters, and there are masters of building MotoGP bikes at the moment. Because there was a part in the season where we thought, okay, maybe KTM is a little bit more competitive than we thought in comparison to Ducati. Maybe Aprilia has a very good bike. But, like, at least since the overseas races, it's completely gone. And
Mm,
KTM is struggling very, very hard. I mean, Brad Binder crashed today, and Jack Miller was seventh, eighth, something like that. I don't know.
yeah.
And Aprilia, they are struggling as well. Like, Maverick was the only Aprilia who finished the race today, and it wasn't a particularly good race as well. And also, the Aprilia is generating so much heat that it's very difficult for the riders to breathe and to
Yeah.
extract, like, performance out of it. And it's especially in those hot races like Malaysia or Thailand. And it's a problem they aren't able to solve. They have, like, this duct which blows fresh air basically into the face of the rider,
Hmm.
but it's not working apparently. and they don't know why the bike is generating so much heat, which is rather unfortunate.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's just a case again of Aprilia and KTM not having really the data on those overseas races, and they don't have those fine margins fixed yet, or if Ducati is really pulling away again because the GP23 is just working now so much better than it was previously, and we are in for a very, very lonely season when it comes to constructors next year. So who knows what's about to happen, but it's a very interesting thing that KTM and Aprilia are struggling so much. And I was googling today if I find something which explains it, but I couldn't find anything. I guess there is an explanation if somebody knows an explanation other than the ones we already mentioned. I believe KTM had also some problems with the front. Then please enlighten me or enlighten us.
Hmm.
But it's not good for the championship that KTM and Aprilia are struggling so hard. I mean, even the Yamahas beat KTM today, which
Yeah.
is not a good sign. I believe Frankie was seventh, right?
Yes, Frankie was seventh and Fabio was fifth.
Yeah, let's check this real quick.
But you do make an
Yeah, that's
excellent
correct.
point.
And Jack Miller was eighth, and the next best KTM were Augusto and Paul in 14th and 15th,
Mm.
which is not a good look. And I'm hoping they will figure it out for next season. One for Pedro's sake, but also for the championship's sake, because it's interesting when there's more going on in the front.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, before we move on, I just want to say I think it's a very good point to raise on an engineering level because a lot of people give Ducati a lot of criticism for having 8 bikes on the grid and this and that and the other. But we've got to give them credit for being amazing craftsmen and women when it comes to building a MotoGP bike because they have done such an amazing job with that bike. I mean, Gigi Dall'Igna, Davide Tardozzi, Paolo Ciabatti, they're basically NASA engineers and they've built a bike that is just a missile with 2 wheels on it, but it's a missile that can now turn better than any bike, that can go faster than any bike, it can grip better than any bike. I mean, it is such an amazing feat of engineering, and they deserve so much credit because, look, KTM is a brilliant launch system, but they've struggled unbelievably in the overseas races. Aprilia need an air conditioning unit on their bike because it's trying to barbecue their riders. To be fair, Yamaha have probably been the best other manufacturer aside from everybody else in Ducati, which is absolutely remarkable to even say that. But I got to give credit to Ducati because they have done such an amazing job with that bike. And what was it, 2 seasons ago? They were struggling massively. And then in the second half of that season, it clicked. So I mean, credit to Ducati's engineers because they've done such an unreal job with that bike.
Yeah, and I figured something out because I was having a thought.
Hmm.
Basically, even if Ducati only had 4 bikes on the grid, let's pretend who would Ducati choose as their rider? I believe Pecco, obviously.
Hmm.
I still believe Enea. I
Hmm.
still believe Jorge Martin. And I
Hmm.
believe Marco Bezzecchi. Those would be my 4 riders if I had to pick out of the Ducati pool.
Yeah,
And
probably.
arguably, they still would be 1, 2, 3 in the World Championship. And
Yeah, they would
Enea
be.
would be there too if he wasn't injured. And while checking this a moment ago, I found something very, very interesting. Marc Marquez is ahead of Enea Bastianini in the World Championship. Sounds
Wow.
absolutely crazy to say. Not because Marc is a bad rider, but the Honda is so bad.
Yeah.
And we naturally think about Enea Bastianini as a good rider, and this shows how bad his season really was.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I really hope KTM will figure it out. Really hope Aprilia will figure it out. I really hope that Enea will figure it out, for the rest of the season and for next season. With Honda and Yamaha, I kind of lost my hope there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was good what the Yamaha riders said. It was positive. I thought like, okay, they could overtake and they were competitive in the qualifying and in the race, and it was quite nice to see. But it's still a Yamaha, and it won't be like this in every race.
Hmm.
but positive sign, and I really hope they find something for 24 to make Fabio and Alex Rins a little bit more competitive, because again, it's nice to see Fabio up there, and even if it's just fifth place, it's nice that he is getting some TV time, because he's a very spectacular rider to watch. And also I hope that Frankie will be good on the Ducati next season.
Yeah, I mean, like, this has been the year from hell to forget for Yamaha. I mean, we've talked about every possible part of it. We've kind of beaten it to death at this point, but they will not be looking to remember the 2023 MotoGP season because it's been a nightmare from beginning to end, pretty much. Fabio, to his immense credit, has pulled out some incredible results. He's even pulled out a podium here or there, which is a superhuman effort. Frankie's looked like the Frankie of 2020 at times, which is a very good sign because you know how much I love Frankie Morbidelli. I just hope, because I am at heart, because of Valentino, bias aside, I am a Yamaha fan. I like Yamaha and I like when they do well. And I do hope they find something for 2024 because this championship is a better one when Yamaha and Honda are competitive. And we need that. As much as I respect Ducati, we don't want to see them win every single thing every single time. We want Yamahas competing for wins. We need Hondas competing for wins. We need Aprilias and KTMs competing as well. So as far as Yamaha go, brilliant weekend for them. Fabio and Frankie had great weekends as well. They did very, very well. And we can only hope that for Fabio and Alex, they have found something for next year because it'll be great. It really, really will be. Last point before I move on and talking about bike craftsmanship, did you see Livio Supo's social media post about what the 2024 Suzuki could have looked like?
Yeah,
Oh, it was such a beautiful livery. I miss Suzuki. Please come back.
I'm still bummed out that BMW didn't take over the
Oh,
project. That would be very, very cool.
oh man, it would be amazing. I would, because again, in car manufacturing and bike manufacturing, I'm a big BMW fan. And a BMW M Sport MotoGP team. Oh, I can see it. I can see it in my mind's eye. It would just be so amazing to see. And they'd have the perfect platform to build off, like we've said before with Suzuki's data, but I don't think it's going to happen. But it would be so brilliant if it did.
No, I mean, the opportunity is long gone, but they were offered it and they declined. So I would like to talk to you about something, which
Hmm.
is something we don't usually discuss in our race reviews,
Hmm.
which is qualifying. And especially Marc Marquez and his antics in following other riders. I would like to hear your opinion. Do you think it's fair game? Or do you think it's too much now that he is putting himself, other riders in danger, and is doing something like which isn't necessarily uh, what a good sportsman would do?
There's two different schools of thought on this, and there's the school of thought that the law is the law the way it's written, and then there's the law of the street, which is a very different thing to the written law. The law, according to the law itself, is that getting a toe's pretty fine and that it is within the rules and you're allowed to do it. But the law on the street of MotoGP is that you just don't do it. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. I think that if you're a good enough rider, you should be able to qualify without somebody else's help. That's just my opinion. And look, for the last few years, Marc Marquez has been at this and he's put himself in real danger quite a few times. In Sepang a few years ago, he had a nasty high side because he tried to toe in Fabio and then he got launched into orbit because of it. I'm really not a fan of it. And then I saw him qualifying in, was it Saturday morning? Pecco was coming out of pit lane and pretty much the whole grid was towing on him. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I think it's dangerous. I think it packs up the grid and it's a disaster waiting to happen. That's just my opinion on it. What's your view on it?
I think there's a difference between people towing behind Pecco
Mm-hmm.
because they do it like in a moderate way. And if you do it and somebody is willing to give you the tow and they say, okay, you won't be faster anyways, fuck you, then it's fair game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Mark is pushing it too far
Yeah.
because, quite specifically, Frankie came to a stop in the pit lane.
Yeah.
Mark drove by, waited for him on track. Quite weird that out of all people he chose a Yamaha,
Mm.
but that basically says how desperate the situation at Honda is at the moment. But my issue is that when you have a rider like Frankie, basically going 10, 20 kilometers an hour and pointing on the track like, hey, come on, go. And you are unwilling to go. And then those games start where, for example, on the back straight, Frankie just hit the brakes and he was nowhere near the breaking point for the final corner, but he would just hit the brakes so Mark would go. And with this kind of, he won the game. But as a rider, you don't have an overview on who is coming behind. And if those games to come at the wrong time, and maybe a group of 4 or 5 people are like way behind, so you don't know that they're there, but because of those games they catch up so rapidly,
Yeah.
and you have speeds over 300 kilometers an hour, it gets very dangerous. It gets dangerous for both riders who are being slow, because it's cooling down the tires so much. That was the reason for Mark's crash.
Mm.
And I think it's time that, when a rider is like Marcus is at the moment, or is been doing it for a couple of years, that you should black flag him for dangerous riding,
Yeah,
because
I
that's the
agree.
only way he'll learn. Like, it's okay to get a tow. I remember Jack Miller in Catalonia last year, I believe, or 2 years ago.
Hmm.
I believe something along the line, because last year he was having the surgery. I don't think Mark rode in Catalonia last year. But basically, it was the situation in pit line where, like, Jack said, "Hey, how much do you pay for
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
slipstream?"
yeah,
Yeah, you remember the situation. And
yeah.
then if you do it, it's fine. I mean, it's part of the game. Everybody does it, like, especially in Moto3.
Hmm.
But in MotoGP, there's not this rule you have in Moto3 that you have to have a certain sector time, otherwise you get a grid penalty.
Mm.
And in MotoGP, this rule doesn't exist, or at least isn't applied. So I think it's a very dangerous game they play, and I really hope that the stewards will step in at some point, because it's getting too much for me. And I don't think that, like, again, with many other things, I have the opinion we should prevent something dangerous before something dangerous happens, and instead of waiting until something dangerous happens and then said, oh fuck, we will have to change the rules, you know.
Yeah.
And this is one point where I think Mark is an 8-time world champion. He should be able to make a good lap on his own. And
Yeah.
if he needs a slipstream, fine. I mean, I'm totally on board with it when he says the Honda is handling much better. But if you have a situation where it's getting very, very dangerous to play those games on track, where there are people going as fast as they can on the fastest motorcycles on the world, then it's time to maybe accept, okay, this isn't the time now to play those games. Let's get on with it. I'm not fighting for a championship here. Let's be safe. And I really hope that the stewards are having a look at this, maybe talk to him, and if it's not bringing a solution to the problem, then my reaction would be, if you see something like I saw in Q1 on Saturday morning, black flag, easy.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much more to say about it, because I agree. And look, like we said, towing towing's been an issue for a few years now, and we've seen some really close calls on it already. In fact, frankly, I'm amazed that the black flag hasn't been brought in for towing already. I thought it would have been 2 years ago. But especially with this weekend, something has to be done about this, because like you said, we've had Franco Morbidelli brake checking Marquez to try and get him to go past him. And I mean, if you think about that scenario when Morbidelli hits the brake and Marquez goes by him, imagine Bagnaia or Martins coming around the corner doing 300 kilometers an hour and he cracks into the back of you. What do you do then? What happens if somebody gets severely injured because these two idiots, well, not actually, that's not true. This idiot is trying to get a toe off of Franco Morbidelli and he won't go by him.
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to be fair, there's two people to this problem, and
Mm.
Frankie just could have went on with his lap and not even invite those games.
That
Also,
is true. That is true. But Marquez keeps doing this and he keeps antagonizing other
yeah,
riders.
it's
And
like 2/3 of the fault is by Mark and one
yeah,
third of the fault is by Frankie.
yeah, listen, look, when you're on the track, I mean, this is the basic fundamentals of being a MotoGP rider. You have a responsibility to be safe and to ensure the safety of everybody else on the track. That goes without saying. And should Franco have just gone on about it? Yeah, he probably should have. But I also get his frustration and I get why he's had enough of this because Marquez has done this to Fabio Quartararo. He's done it to Bagnaia. He's done it to Jack Miller, who, yes, he was okay with it, but he's done it to so many riders now, and Franco's not going to put up with that. Franco's an emotional guy, he can sort of flip pretty easily, as we know, but it's not an excuse either. And if you're Marc Marquez, especially, like you said, 8-time world champion, if you can't go out and set a good qualifying time on your own without interrupting other riders, maybe you don't belong in the grid. Simple as that, because there's riders there who can set their own times. Augusto Fernandez can set his own time. Loads of other riders can set their own time. Why can't Mark?
Yeah. And there's one last thing I would like to discuss with you because
Mm-hmm.
nothing really happened at the race, so we have to talk about other things, like this rumor that Luca Marini is apparently approached by Repsol,
Mm.
and Fermin Aldeguer is linked to Valentino Rossi's team.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of know your answer to this, but I'm still excited to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to be a shock to you or to anybody. I don't think there's any truth to it at all. I've read about 10 different reports of different riders being linked to Repsol Honda. First, it was Miguel Oliveira, then it was Maverick Vinales, then it was Fermin Aldeguer, now it's Luca Marini. I just don't believe any of these reports at all. I mean, either Honda are incredibly desperate or the media are clickbaiting beyond belief. But of all the riders that have been linked, the least that I believe is Luca Marini because the Valentino link's far too strong. He's a stalwart of the team, and Rossi's not going to let him go to Honda of all manufacturers. So absolutely no truth to this whatsoever. Do not believe it one bit. I would put more credence in a link to someone like Miguel Oliveira before I would believe a link to someone like Luca Marini. Even the Fermin Aldeguer rumors, I don't believe those either. Don't get me wrong, if something happened and a Luca Marini left, I think he'd be a very good fit for VR46. I'm not criticizing Fermin Aldeguer. I just don't think that move's going to happen. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see it.
The thing is, it makes total sense if you're Honda,
Yeah.
but it makes zero sense if you're Luca Marini.
Yeah.
That's the point of it. I mean, Luca publicly said that he has been approached by Honda and that he feels honored to be part of this conversation. And I understand that it's probably a nice feeling if you're a factory rider, but he will have a GP23 next season. This
Mm.
bike he will ride won the world championship. And he is in a team managed by his older brother. It's the perfect world for him. There is no reason at all to go to Honda, risk his career, because the Honda is not a safe motorcycle. Look what it did to Alex Rins. Look what it did to Marc Marquez. Look what it did to Joan Mir. And luckily, I don't know how, Taka Nakagami survived now, like,
How
how
is
many years?
Nakagami still alive?
8 years on a Honda. And I don't recall any of those horrific injuries, at least in the recent time. I mean, could have been he injured himself at some point, probably, like every rider does.
Mm.
But Nakagami is like almost a hero that he is able to ride the Honda without frequently getting injured.
Mm.
But it makes zero sense for Luca Marini to go to Honda. It makes zero sense for Honda to pick up Fermin Aldeguer. And I still believe that the right call would be Digia, because Digia needs a seat. He's out of a seat, quite frankly. And he doesn't have a MotoGP seat at the moment. He doesn't have a World Superbike seat. Where is he supposed to go? Back to
Yeah.
Moto2. It's not really an option if I'm putting myself into his shoes.
Hmm.
But Repsol Honda is like the perfect spot for him because he needs a MotoGP seat. And Honda looks out for somebody like DGR because they need somebody who has a couple of years in MotoGP. Like, okay, Luca Marini would be a good rider if you're Honda, but Luca Marini isn't in a desperate situation like DGR is. So, I mean, I really hope for him that he won't go there. And quite frankly, I don't understand what Fermin Aldeguer has to do with Valentino Rossi. That would be new to me. If I was Valentino, I would put Marini and Bezecchi into the team next year and then wait and decide what happens with Marco Bezecchi. And maybe he will get picked up by a team which runs a factory seat. And also, I would have my eyes on Celestino Vietti because next year he's at Red Bull KTM Ayo, and we all know how good Ayo is, and now
Mm.
they have 3 champions in a row.
Yeah.
So it's it's a tough question what to do if you're a Honda because you need a rider and you need somebody with MotoGP experience. But it's an easy answer to the question if you're Luca Marini because you don't want to go to Honda if you have the opportunity to ride a GP23 next year. Quite simple.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, that's the beginning and the end of that discussion. Makes zero sense for Luca Marini. Yeah, if you're Honda, of course it makes sense. Luca Marini is a very experienced yet young rider, so yeah, of course it makes sense. It's not going to happen though. And it's so funny you mentioned Digia because that's who I had in my mind as well. You know, Gian Antonio has like 2 years of MotoGP experience now, so he's young, but he has the experience that you're looking for. And also, if you're actually willing to commit to a rider, he's a decent rider to build the project around as well. Give him time to develop the bike, learn the bike, and give him some breathing room. And he could be a very good asset to Honda. Plus, he needs a seat next year, and he doesn't have any offers that I'm aware of. So, yeah, Fabio Di Gianantonio makes sense. The only real option that trumps a Di Gianantonio for me is a Miguel Oliveira if he wants to leave Aprilia, which I don't think he would. But if he did, go for someone like Miguel Oliveira. But outside of that, Fabio Di Gianantonio is pretty much your best option.
The thing with Honda is they want somebody with a 1 year contract
That's
because
true.
in 2024 all the contracts are running out,
Hmm.
and Miguel Oliveira wants a 2 year contract.
Mm.
Understandable because he wants to have some stability, and also I would assume that somebody like Fermin Aldeguer or somebody like Luca Marini would like to have a contract over multiple years. And
Yes.
Digia is in such a desperate situation that they could offer him a 1 year deal and he would take it. So it's quite easy. And we briefly touched about Red Bull KTM Ayo and Pedro winning the world championship. Um, Moto2, yes, first of all, congratulations to Pedro, but Moto2 was even less exciting than MotoGP.
It was so
We
dull.
knew we knew for weeks that Pedro will win the world championship, and it was just like a matter of time. Fermin Aldeguer had a very, 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 very good start to the race, and he was out in front in the first corner after he bumped out Manu Gonzalez, but like nothing happened again.
Yeah.
We knew Pedro was going to win the world championship. Apparently, turn 9 is the final boss when it comes to losing a Moto2 championship. And I mean, I don't know what to say. Aaron Canet crashed out yet again. He's crashing too much, yes. Ogura had a good race, bad qualifying, and Fermin was good. Pedro was world champion, but nothing really worth discussing. I mean, Marcos Ramirez had a podium, which was nice. I didn't see this one coming. He's been on form for the last couple of rounds. But I mean, I really could have slept during the Moto2 race and would have had a better time. I mean,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah,
fuck?
as far as Moto 2 goes, first of all, congratulations to Pedro Acosta. The young goat does it again, but we knew it was going to happen, so it's kind of subdued in that way. Fermin Aldeguer has had two phenomenal weekends. He's been untouchable, which is amazing, especially in the overseas races. Marcos Ramirez pulls a podium out of nowhere, so big ups to him, I guess. But yeah, really, in Moto 2, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not lying to you, nothing much happened really. It was kind of your standard race, really. Nothing happened worth reporting. Pedro gets crowned Moto 2 champion. I think there's an argument he's the most hyped entrant into MotoGP since Marc Marquez. So excited for 2024 because that's going to be fireworks. And yeah, as far as Moto 2 goes, Fermin Aldeguer might well be a new title favourite for next year alongside an Alonso Lopez, maybe. But yeah, all around pretty normal action.
I mean, Moto2 was boring,
Yeah.
but Moto3 was fucking amazing.
I I love Moto 3 so much.
Honestly, the most awake I've been today
Yeah.
was during the last lap in Moto3. First of all, Collin, exceptional talent. What he did on a track where he's never ridden, he is so amazing. He quite frankly started to not give a fuck about Ayumu Sasaki's world championship. And rightfully so. It's his to win and not Collin's job to make Ayumu Sasaki world champion. And I think that Collin has a very, very bright future. He's doing everything right, and I'm absolutely loving it. The team didn't really seem too happy when you saw the clip in the box, which, in my opinion, again, is utterly ridiculous because you have a superstar in your team. Maybe you should make him feel wanted.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the other thing is, if Ayumu Sasaki isn't able to beat a rookie in his first race on a particular circuit where he never raced at before in his life, then maybe he shouldn't be world champion. And if Ayumu Sasaki is, I believe, now 7 times in second position this season,
I think so.
I don't know. I will check this later.
The
But
new Aaron Canet.
if he isn't able to win, then he maybe isn't able to win a world championship as well. I think it would be utterly ridiculous and equally funny if he won a world championship without winning a race. That would be
Yeah.
hilarious. But for the team to not be happy about Collin winning is utterly ridiculous, and it's I don't know how to say it in English. Give me a second. Okay, because we have a wonderful word in Germany, which is Armutszeugnis. And basically, the translation would be a poverty certificate.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, what was this incompetence thing? Yeah, evidence of incapacity. So it's utterly ridiculous. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves if they really weren't happy. I mean, maybe it was just a bad look on TV, but usually you see how a team react if a rider wins, and it was not the usual reaction. So it was a weird one. So I'm a little bit disappointed in those people there because you
Mhm.
saw like the second row in the team was celebrating, the other row was like, come on. Nah. I mean, it's not Colin's responsibility to make Ayumu Sasaki a world champion. That should be Ayumu's responsibility, and if he isn't able to do it, Hamamasia is basically doing everything right at the moment because he isn't fucking it up, and he's very, very good in managing his championship lead. He didn't take any unnecessary risks today, and also he was a little bit lucky that Collin won and not Sasaki, which
Mm-hmm.
is out of his power, but it was good for him. And I really think that Jaume is the more complete package at the moment.
Yeah. First of all, Collin Veijer. Wow. How good has this kid been the last few weeks, Leo? It is unbelievable. I'm so happy for him, man, because he could be the next star in Moto3 for next season. He really, really could be. And I love that in the last lap of this race, he just said to Ayumu Sasaki, fuck your championship. I'm going for the win here. Kill yourself. Collin Veijer is just that guy. He just is. And I love that he went for it. And you know what? I don't even care. The team had muted celebrations. Collin Veijer celebrated by himself on the podium, and that's all that matters. This kid is his own team, and he's going to get so many new fans for this because he's been amazing, and I'm so happy for his success. He's so talented, he's so gifted, and to see it all coming together, like we've said the last few weeks, it really is a very, very cool thing to see. Ayumu Sasaki doing very well. Obviously, can't beat a rookie who's his teammate, but he's doing well. I mean, if second place is still good, but yeah, Ayumu Sasaki doing very well. And then Jaime Masia, 13-point lead going into Qatar, which is known for carnage in Moto 3. That mile long straight is going to be so much fun to watch next Sunday. Yeah, pretty much that's all I've got to say about the podium. Jaime Masia is doing it right. Ayumu Sasaki's getting those points, and Collin Veijer's the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up on Wikipedia, and there's a couple of things I would like to mention.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if Ayumu Sasaki wants to win a world championship, he maybe shouldn't crash in Argentina and America.
Valid.
Yes, and this is more important to winning a championship than relying on your rookie teammate to help you.
Yep.
And the second thing is, while I was looking it up on Wikipedia, I got this advertisement that Wikipedia is looking for somebody to donate, and
Yep.
I refuse to give Wikipedia any money because Elon Musk offered them 1 billion to change their name to Wikipedia, and since they refused this offer, I think it's utterly ridiculous to ask a poor man like me to to give them money, and they should do the right thing and rename them Wikipedia.
Absolute poverty franchise.
Yeah. So Masia didn't seem to have the pace today, and what was really weird for me, usually the Leopard Honda is quite good on the straight,
Mm-hmm.
and he seemed to not have really the pace on the straight to catch up with two slipstreams like in front of him, which was a little bit weird. And I'm excited to see how in Qatar it plays out, because remember, last year in Qatar, Ayumu Sasaki was leading by maybe an hour or something. He was in a different time zone, so far ahead he was. And then he fucked it up and had this near high side where he damaged the bike, and basically his whole race fell apart there. And Honda has been quite good in Qatar when you look at the recent years. And also, Jaume Masia won the first race in 2021
Mm-hmm.
after, like, in front of Pedro, and then Pedro won from the pit lane. So it's a good track kind of for both of them. It's a good track for Honda. It's a good track for Ayumu Sasaki, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out with this crazy long straight. So it's wild, but what was even wilder, and I touched on this previously, what the fuck was Jose Antonio Rueda
Oh
thinking?
my god.
It was such a bad call that, usually you expect something like this from Dennis Öncü or like from David Munoz. But what bums me out is that I remember last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago, I don't know, we pointed out how well Jose Antonio Rueda is doing in terms of consistency. He is not always, he's not as good as Alonso, he's not as flashy as Collin at times, but he's always there. And he's somewhat in the points, sometimes further up, sometimes further down. And even a race like Phillip Island, where he gets lapped, he still stays on the bike. And Jose Antonio Rueda is such a good rider, such a talented rider. And there's a few issues with him. And I discussed this with Eddie O'Shea. And sadly, the end of the podcast, we had some technical issues. So some parts didn't record. And I would like to sum it up. The Honda Jose Antonio Rueda was riding in Junior GP is suiting his riding style perfectly because he's such a smooth rider. He carries so much corner speed, and the KTM is more like a motorcycle where you have to brake late and accelerate out of the corner, like in a V shape, like
Uh-huh.
bigger bikes are tend to be handled.
Mm-hmm.
And the Honda is more like a flowing bike where you can carry a lot of corner speed. And he is extraordinarily well at it. And the KTM they ran in the Red Bull Rookies Cup is nowhere near the KTM they're running in the World Championship. It's like
Yeah.
from 2014, I believe. It's like a different level of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And Jose Antonio Rueda is struggling a lot to adapt to the KTM. And Eddie's opinion is that it was the wrong move to go to Ayo. He should have gone to Leopard
Mm-hmm.
because he needs a Honda to be good, and then he should be more or less unbeatable. But things are how they are, and when I translate this knowledge to this race, it seems like Jose Antonio Rueda is struggling to be late on the brakes, like Pedro is so good at. You remember in Moto3, he was overtaking people left and right, sometimes he overtaking two people in one corner on the brakes, and that's how the KTM has to be ridden.
Yeah.
And he just overshot it and couldn't couldn't correct his mistake and was taking out Bettelli and Öncü in the process. And I felt very, very bad for Bettelli because he was riding phenomenally.
Yeah.
And he's not a rider you're used to seeing at the front. So I was extremely happy for him. And also, Dennis Öncü is always an entertaining factor. So I like to see him battling for the race win because he's always good for something memeable. And it's just very, very sad that Jose Antonio Rueda made this mistake, especially when you consider that he ruined the races of two other riders. And it's just not a good look to do this as a double champion. Like, quite frankly, he is a Red Bull Rookies Cup and Junior GP champion. He should know better. And especially when you see somebody like Collin or see somebody like David Alonso, they are usually quite organized in the way they race. And Jose Antonio Rueda is also quite organized. He's not known for stupid, ambitious moves like David Munoz is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was very reckless, and I really hope that it doesn't repeat itself and he kind of figures the KTM out because he's way too good to not fight for race victories and not fight even for world championships in the future.
Well, I'm upset because Dennis Onchi can I no longer be Moto3 world champion. So cheers for that, Jose Antonio Rueda. Thanks for fucking my season up. Appreciate that. Needed that in my life. I mean, what the hell is Jose Antonio Rueda doing? I mean, completely overshoots the corner, hits Batali, hits Dennis Onchu, and just like that, it's all over. It's I don't want to beat on Jose Antonio Rueda too much because he's a really good kid and he's a very good rider, but that was just a brain fart of biblical proportions today. It was so stupid. I mean, I can't even say what was he thinking because he wasn't thinking. He wasn't thinking at all when he let himself go out wide, hit Dennis Onchu, hit Batali, and that's really all that happened. I do think he needs to be punished for that, though. There needs to be some kind of penalty for Qatar. But
Make
Yeah,
him
look,
start from the pit lane and see what he does.
yeah, yeah, pit lane Rueda. Let's do that. Let's see how that works out. At least he can't hit anybody. So yeah, look, it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's an unfortunate accident. Dennis Onchu's going to be enraged, quite rightly so. But look, it does happen from time to time, and especially in Moto 3, it does happen. But we learn and we move, I guess.
Yeah. And to end the podcast on a positive note, I'm making 3 crosses. I'm praying to Mecca and whatever the Jews are doing. Um, Alonso was so lucky. I mean, he is
Oh,
very, 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 very lucky that he didn't get collected because, like, when you remember the people who sadly passed away in motorcycle racing, it was those kinds of incidents. Like Manu Gonzalez as well. He was so lucky today that nobody collected him and his bike. And it was just crazy how many people crashed in this corner. And that he walked out of this mess without somebody touching. Massive, massive
oh,
credit to everybody who was riding behind Alonso and avoided him. Massive credit to his guardian angel and everybody who was involved. I don't care. Thank you, because this could have gone very, very wrong. And I'm very happy that Alonso is good to go and seems to be healthy. I haven't read or heard anything about him being injured and the other riders. So I mean, it was like not quite as close as Rossi and Vinales in Austria in
mm,
2020, but it's always something very, very good, and we should be thankful for all those riders, how good they are, how quickly they can react to those incidents. Because, like with Manu Gonzalez today, with Alonso today, those things can go very, very badly. And I'm very happy that we didn't see anything like this today. So I just wanted to end the podcast with a positive note, and maybe are the people in Malaysia, have they anything to do with like Buddhism and Hinduism, or is it like Muslim country? Because I believe Indonesia is a Muslim country. Like even if it was like Buddha who was involved there, I don't give a fuck. Thanks
whatever
for this.
deity was involved in
Yeah,
saving
thanks
David
for this.
Alonso.
I will Google this right now.
I think it was
Uh,
the rain lady. Oh no, wait, that's Thailand. Sorry, I fucked
no,
it
she's
up.
Indonesian.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, yeah, it was
Oh, right.
Indonesia.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you brought that up because sadly we have seen that, and rest in peace, Jason DePasquier, of course, and all the others. It is heartbreaking because it can happen, and sometimes it does happen. But thank the Lord, thank Allah, thank whatever deity you believe in, okay? We're in a situation in the world where we don't need this kind of hatred, all right? Whatever deity you believe in, thank him or her that David Alonso and Manu Gonzalez were okay today, and thank them for how great these riders are because they all managed to get out of the way. Thank the Lord. Um, we see it happen. We see it happen, and we have seen it happen recently with different riders. So thank God those two weren't added to that list, and they live to fight and ride another day. And yeah, you know, thank you to whoever it was keeping them safe because it was much needed.
Yeah,
I'm
and
still
I
glad. I'm sorry.
aspire.
I'm still trying to get over you saying whatever the Jews do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that like I know what Christians do. I
Mm,
kind of I kind of know what Muslims are doing, but I don't know what the Jews are doing to like thank God for something like this. I'm generally curious if anybody knows, but I'm still aspiring to be an educational podcast.
yeah.
So due to the fact that I want to be educational, I'm about to educate you.
Okay.
And in the Malaysian constitution, the religion of Islam is written down as the state religion of Malaysia. So Alhamdulillah, and gonna see you in Qatar. Goodbye.
I'll